What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. This is Leo's Nerd Talk, and today we're going to be talking about the Book of Clarence. So let's get into that. Well, I'm happy to say that we can start off 2024 pretty strong with the Book of Clarence. This basically tells a reimagining, a retelling of the classical biblical story, kind of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, but kind of all in the perspective of Clarence and his kind of life going from being this poor, kind of street smart type of person, from a man of no faith, not believing in all these different miracles that are happening, to becoming a new Messiah in a sense. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into the positives for me. And one, this kind of has a pretty high caliber cast of actors here, right? You have a bunch of different people here that pretty much intrigued me from the beginning. The movie itself, the trailer definitely seemed interesting, not something that I would typically kind of gravitate to, but the cast itself was kind of what put me into the seat. You know, you might notice that I did not put this in my most anticipated movies of the year, but I was definitely interested in checking this out, and the cast itself did not disappoint. We had some great dialogue here, some great acting, and lots of emotions, some actually pretty decent humor overall, and I just really enjoyed the overall story that they were trying to tell here. Like I said, it's kind of a reimagining of a classic biblical story. I also really enjoyed the set design. This is kind of like a period piece, essentially. You know, we were back way in the BCs, and the set design that they have here, it's beautiful. I'm not sure if this is a set or this is actually on location. I'm not too sure on that. I never really looked into it, but it just looks gorgeous. They definitely captured the vibe of this kind of era, and I just love the environment that they put themselves into. It definitely captures that kind of older feeling, and this is very reminiscent of a lot of older kind of religious movies from earlier in the 90s, 60s, 70s, all from all the different eras. But this, again, more this reimagining where you kind of have a little bit of humor. It kind of takes its own little twist, and it kind of takes its own liberty on changing some things that are honestly not really that offensive, especially if you're religious. And speaking of that, that's definitely something that I really enjoyed about this movie, where, like I said, it takes its own kind of liberties of changing certain scenarios of this kind of story that a lot of people already know and seen in different movies that are mainly for religious people, where this is kind of more of a wide, broad kind of appeal, where if you're not really religious, you can still definitely take a look at this movie and enjoy it. But I don't think it really offends anybody. I don't think it's even trying to offend anybody. It actually does a pretty good job of telling the story. Even with the couple of changes that they do here, they work very, very well, and I really enjoyed myself throughout the entire film. I also kind of like the way they broke up the story of different books. You know, most movies, you can definitely tell when, you're into the first, second, or third act. This blatantly tells you this is book one, so that's act one. Book two, that's act two, and book three, that's act three. And I like the way it breaks it apart, where you have a specific story that you're telling in each and every one of those, and they all kind of have a through line as well as a conclusion by the end of that certain act that still gives you another through line to the next act, and it all seamlessly works together while still having satisfying conclusions in each individual act. And I really enjoyed that, where it breaks the story apart, but it doesn't feel choppy in the overall through line. It still has a full story that can easily be comprehensible. And I really like the soundtrack that they implemented here, where it has a lot of hip hop, and it definitely fits with the themes that they're trying to kind of go with here, where Clarence is kind of the street smart person, where he's like selling drugs, trying to make a name for himself, doing schemes, doing tricks to, again, try to make a name for himself. And all these kind of soundtracks and music that's going on definitely helps elevate what you're seeing on screen, which I really enjoyed. And on the way home from the theater, I popped on the soundtrack and I was already listening to it, because I generally really enjoyed the soundtrack that was on here. And although this takes some creative liberties, there are some pretty funny moments, some good humor here. Like I said earlier, it's not supposed to offend anybody, and I think it does a great job of not trying to offend anybody. And I think even though where you're having a movie where there is some humor to be involved, there are some parts where it feels like it's not taking itself too serious, the overall movie itself is still a pretty serious movie. And there are some scenes and aspects of it that are kind of difficult to watch, and when you kind of sit back and think about it, it is kind of sad and unfortunate things like this happen within the story, and it just makes for an overall enjoyable experience where you have a lot of different themes and again, a lot of different emotions, where you have the fun times, the humorous times, you have the serious times, you have some of the hard emotions, especially with Clarence and his brother, and him trying to become a non-believer into a believer. There's just a lot of different nice themes and emotions here that overall wrap up the story pretty well. And I just had a actually pretty great time with it. And lastly, I also really enjoyed the imagery. The camera work is beautiful, but there's a lot of different things and sequences throughout the entire time that have biblical imagery that I actually really enjoyed. I like the way they did it. Probably one of the more noticeable ones is where you kind of see the Last Supper, where you're trying to figure out who's kind of the rat or the tattletale within the disciples of Jesus. And the camera kind of slowly pans down while they're all arguing. And it does like a still shot where you kind of see the imagery of the Last Supper, which is pretty nice to see. And the camera work and the directing was done really, really well. So I really enjoyed myself. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the cons for me. And to be honest, not too many cons here. I really enjoyed myself throughout the entire film. I think really the only con I can really give this movie is where there's the certain acts and, or the books that they kind of set up. Some of them felt a little long-winded. They felt like they extended kind of a little bit past what they were trying to do here. And that's totally fine because by the end of it, it still thematically feels really concrete and a very tight-knit story. But while you're watching it, it does make it feel a little bit longer than what it's supposed to be. And in a 2-hour long movie, it definitely felt like it was 2.5 hours by the time you finish it. But overall, I think this did an amazing job on telling this kind of biblical story without trying to offend anybody, still being very entertaining and funny at times and still emotional. So not too much to nitpick here on this movie. I actually really enjoyed it. And unless we have a kick-ass 2024, I feel like this is already going to be within my top 15 or top 10 of the year. But overall, let me know what you guys thought about the Book of Clarence. I hope a lot of people go to see this because it's definitely a movie that needs the audience. I went to the movie theater today and I was one of 3 people in the entire theater, which is unfortunate. And this today was opening night. So I hope a lot of people will see it. This definitely deserves the praise. I really enjoyed myself. I think it did an amazing job in storytelling, directing, acting, visuals, soundtrack. So definitely go check it out. If you weren't planning on checking it out, definitely go check it out. I highly recommend it. But that'll be it for this one, guys. We're starting off 2024 pretty strong here with the Book of Clarence, and I hope 2024 is a stronger year than 2023 ever was. And I'll go ahead and see you guys on the next review. And just remember, if you guys like talking about anything movies, TV shows, or video game related, consider liking and subscribing down below. Thank you.